Have you ever really thought about India? I mean, like, really thought about it. We're talking about a nation with over 1 billion people, a place steeped in history, and with this booming tech sector that's making waves all over the globe. It's a country that really grabs your attention. But then you start to dig a little deeper, and you stumble upon this interesting concept, India's thinking problem.
It is kind of a puzzle, right? This idea that a nation with so much potential might be wrestling with how it thinks. That's what really piqued our interest.
It is. And it's not just some abstract idea either. This impacts everything.
Hmm.
Think about how a society tackles problems, how it comes up with those groundbreaking ideas that push things forward. That's why in this deep dive, we're going to try to get to the bottom of this thinking problem.
Yeah, what does it actually mean?
Right. Where did it come from?
And what's being done about it?
Exactly. And for everyone listening, even if India feels a world away, this is really about something universal.
It is.
It's about how societies develop those essential skills. Like questioning, analyzing, and creating. These are skills that matter no matter where you are or what you do.
Absolutely. And if we zoom out a bit, India's efforts to encourage this kind of critical thinking, it offers valuable lessons for any society that's dealing with rapid change and all the complexities of our modern world.
It does.
It's almost like a case study in a global challenge.
I like that, a case study. Okay, so let's get into the specifics here. When we talk about this thinking problem, what are we really focusing on? It's not just a lack of information.
Right. You hit the nail on the head. The analysis we're looking at, it points to a fundamental gap when it comes to critical thinking. And this isn't just about knowing facts.
Right?
It's about going beyond just accepting information at face value. It's that ability to really dig into the assumptions behind things, to rigorously examine the evidence, and then come up with solutions that are both innovative and effective.
So it's about being an active investigator of information, not just a passive recipient. Now, the analysis suggests that the roots of this thinking problem, they go way back. They're interwoven with India's history and cultural fabric. There's even mention of this context-sensitive approach, a term used by scholars like A.K. Ramanujan.
Oh, yeah, Ramanujan. Fascinating work.
What does that tell us about the foundations of Indian thought?
You know what's really interesting here is how Ramanujan's work sheds light on this historical emphasis in Indian thought on understanding things within specific relationships and contexts. So it's less about applying universal abstract principles and more about understanding things in relation to their specific surroundings. It's kind of like, imagine if you knew all the intricate rules of a beloved local game that's unique to your community, and then suddenly you're thrown into a game with a totally different set of rules that are standardized globally.
I see.
Now, while this context-rich approach has absolutely enriched India's diverse culture, the analysis suggests that in today's world, which is so interconnected and often demands those universal frameworks and encourages disruptive innovation, it can create certain challenges.
So it's about finding a way to harmonize that rich heritage with a global landscape that often operates on more standardized, innovation-driven terms.
Yeah.
And one big piece of this puzzle seems to be the education system, which the report kind of bluntly describes as heavily focused on rote memorization.
Yeah, the analysis doesn't pull any punches there.
It doesn't.
And it's pretty direct about how the traditional education system in India has really prioritized memorizing facts and figures, often at the expense of fostering genuine understanding and analytical abilities.
And the result is?
Well, think of it this way. You might have students who can ace exams because they're great at recalling information, but then they struggle when they're hit with questions that require them to actually apply that knowledge in new or different situations.
Right.
It's like having this vast library in your head, but not really knowing how to connect the dots or draw new conclusions from all those books.
It is. And this isn't just an observation or a hunch, is it? The report actually cites a study that found surprisingly little improvement in critical thinking skills among Indian STEM students throughout their entire academic journeys.
It is a pretty sobering statistic.
Yeah.
And it really highlights that just being exposed to technical subjects isn't enough to cultivate those higher order thinking skills that are essential for innovation and problem solving.
Right.
It suggests that there's a fundamental disconnect between what's being taught and the intellectual outcomes that are desired.
So we've got this historical context emphasizing relational understanding and education system that's really focused on memorization. But the analysis goes beyond just the formal education system. It points to some deeply ingrained cultural influences as well. For example, it talks about the hierarchical structures within society and how those structures might unintentionally discourage questioning.
Yeah, that's a really important point. Deep respect for elders, teachers, and those in positions of authority, it's a cornerstone of Indian culture, a really valuable aspect of the ethos. But sometimes it can create an environment where questioning those figures is seen as a challenge to their authority rather than a genuine desire to understand. Imagine a child who's hesitant to ask why to a respected figure. This can unintentionally stifle that natural curiosity and the inclination to challenge assumptions, which are so crucial for critical thinking to blossom. It's about nurturing a culture where inquiry is welcomed and seen as a path to deeper learning, not as a sign of disrespect.
It is, and the analysis draws a fascinating connection between this and the legacy of the colonial-era education system, which was really more geared towards producing clerks than cultivating independent thinkers.
Absolutely. The main purpose of the colonial education system was to create a workforce for administrative tasks. So the focus was on obedience, following instructions, not on independent thought or taking initiative.
Yep.
Dismantling that legacy and the lingering effects it's had on teaching methods and societal expectations, that's a massive undertaking, a process that's still ongoing.
It is. And so when you put all of these pieces together, the historical context that emphasizes relational understanding, an education system that's fixated on memorization and cultural norms that might subtly discourage questioning you kind of create this fertile ground for an accept and repeat mentality to take hold.
Yeah.
And that can really hinder the kind of creativity and problem solving a nation as large and as ambitious as India needs to thrive.
Exactly. It's about encouraging a shift, a move away from passively receiving knowledge towards actively creating it and critically engaging with information.
Right. But it's not all doom and gloom, right?
Hmm.
The analysis doesn't just focus on the challenges. It also highlights some current efforts, some really promising seeds of change that are being sown. And one of the biggest ones seems to be the National Education Policy 2020, or NEP 2020.
Yeah, NEP 2020, that's a big deal. It's a really significant policy document that explicitly recognizes the importance of critical thinking and problem-solving skills.
It does.
It advocates for a fundamental change in how teaching and learning happen in India. It's about moving away from that heavy reliance on rote learning and toward more hands-on, experiential, and holistic approaches.
I see.
And what's interesting is they've set this ambitious target to fully implement these changes by 2030, which really signals a long-term commitment at the highest levels of policy.
It does. And it's not just about what's happening within the four walls of a classroom, right? There's also a recognition of the need for media literacy, especially in this age of information overload. The analysis even highlights initiatives like Fakshala.
And that's so important. What's really interesting here is the understanding that critical thinking, it goes way beyond just academic exercises. In a world where information spreads like wildfires, especially through informal channels like WhatsApp in India, the ability to sift through all that noise and figure out what's credible and what's misinformation, that's absolutely vital for an informed citizenry. Shala's work in equipping individuals with those skills, it's a crucial step in fostering a more discerning and thoughtful society.
Couldn't agree more. I also noticed the analysis emphasizes the integration of arts and vocational training more deeply into the curriculum. What's the connection there with this thinking problem?
Well, it reflects a growing recognition that creativity and practical skills, they're not separate from intellectual development. They're all part of the package. They contribute to a well-rounded individual and play a big role in problem-solving abilities. By encouraging a more multidisciplinary approach, like what NEP 2020 envisions, the goal is to nurture individuals who can think outside the box and apply their knowledge in practical, real-world situations. It's about cultivating intellectual agility and practical competence.
It is. And what about the role of ed tech startups like Byju's and Unacademy? They've really shaken up the learning landscape, but are they inherently promoting critical thinking?
You know, the analysis suggests they have the potential. By offering more interactive and engaging learning experiences that focus on understanding concepts rather than just memorizing facts, these platforms can definitely contribute to changing how people learn. But it's crucial to ask whether their content truly encourages active questioning and independent thought, or if it still leans towards passively absorbing pre-packaged information.
Right.
That's the key question.
It is. It's interesting to see that even examination boards are adapting. They're starting to include more application-based questions. That seems like a direct way to evaluate those analytical skills.
Exactly. It's a shift away from tests that mainly focus on recall towards assessments that require students to apply their knowledge, analyze situations, and solve problems. By changing how they evaluate students, examination boards are sending a clear message about what kind of learning is truly valued.
Right.
And this shift can then influence teaching practices and encourage students to really dig deeper into the material.
So there are definitely signs of progress. There's a clear awareness of the thinking problem, and some really promising initiatives are in motion. But the analysis also points out that progress isn't going to be a walk in the park. There's some significant gaps and challenges to tackle.
Oh, for sure. Putting reforms as ambitious as NEP 2020 into action across such a vast and diverse country like India, it's a huge undertaking. One of the key challenges that the analysis highlights is teacher preparedness. Reports suggest that a good number of educators feel they haven't received enough training to effectively embrace these new, more student-centered teaching methods that put critical thinking front and center.
Right.
And without well-equipped teachers in every classroom, the vision of this policy, it might not be fully realized.
And then you've got the age-old issue of infrastructure.
Yeah.
The disparities that exist, particularly between urban and rural areas. That's a major obstacle when it comes to implementing things like hands-on experiential learning.
Absolutely. When schools lack basic facilities, let alone the resources for practical experiential learning, it creates a huge barrier, especially for students in rural and underserved communities. This not only hinders the development of critical thinking skills, but it also risks making existing educational inequalities even worse.
Right. And we can't forget about that deeply ingrained cultural resistance that we talked about earlier. That mindset that still often puts a premium on high exam scores above everything else.
Yeah.
That's a tough perception to change.
It is. Shifting deeply ingrained societal perceptions and expectations that takes time and consistent effort. For many parents and educators, the immediate pressure of academic performance in exams often overshadows the long-term benefits of holistic development and critical thinking skills.
Hey,
Overcoming this resistance requires ongoing dialogue, raising awareness about the importance of these skills, and showing their real-world value and impact.
for sure. And the role of technology, while it offers so much potential, is presented as a bit of a double-edged sword.
It is.
There's some potential downsides to consider alongside all the benefits.
You're absolutely right. Technology can be a powerful tool for learning and giving access to a ton of information. But relying on it too much without proper guidance can actually hinder the development of independent critical thinking.
Right.
Plus, the digital divide and unequal access to technology, they can worsen those educational gaps, creating a situation where some students are thriving while others are left behind.
They can. So overcoming these challenges, teacher preparedness, infrastructure disparities, cultural inertia, and the complexities that technology, it really highlights that this isn't a problem with a quick fix. It requires sustained effort across the board.
Absolutely. This calls for a long-term commitment, a significant investment of resources, and a collective will to truly prioritize and foster critical thinking as a fundamental value in education and in society as a whole.
And this naturally brings us to thinking about the future and the future strategies that could help build a truly thinking nation. The analysis outlines some interesting possibilities, and bolstering teacher training seems to be a recurring and crucial theme.
It's absolutely essential. Investing heavily in comprehensive and ongoing professional development for teachers, that's paramount. Educators need to be equipped with the right skills and the right mindset to effectively foster critical thinking, inquiry-based learning, and problem-solving in their classrooms. It's really encouraging to see NEP 2020's focus on continuous professional development.
It is. And the idea of integrating experiential and project-based learning more deeply at all levels of education, really connecting theory with practical application, that seems key too. The analysis even suggests looking at models like Finland's education system.
What's really interesting about Finland's approach is that it values both a strong academic foundation and creative exploration. It seamlessly blends arts and sciences. Adopting more experiential and project-based learning in India could help students see how what they're learning applies to the real world, which can lead to a deeper understanding and a more critical engagement with the material. It's about moving beyond abstract concepts to tangible experiences and active exploration.
I see. The analysis also highlights the importance of community engagement, really getting parents and local communities involved in the educational process. How can that contribute to this broader shift?
Well, by actively involving parents and the wider community in education, you can start to change those cultural perceptions around what constitutes valuable learning. When communities as a whole understand and value things like curiosity, creativity, and critical thinking alongside those traditional measures of academic achievement, it creates a much more supportive environment for fostering those skills in children.
I see.
It's about creating a shared vision and a sense of collective responsibility for education.
That makes sense. And then there's this idea of using technology in a thoughtful way to develop affordable digital tools that are tailored specifically to India's diverse learning environments.
And the emphasis here is on thoughtfully. Technology should be seen as a tool to empower and to democratize access to quality education and to enhance the learning experience. But it shouldn't be seen as a replacement for real human interaction and the development of those core thinking skills. Developing affordable and relevant digital resources is crucial for reaching learners from all walks of life.
Absolutely. And finally, the strategy of fostering global collaborations and partnerships with countries that have a proven track record in vocational and skill-based education. That seems like a smart way to learn from the best and gain valuable insights and frameworks.
Oh, definitely. By partnering with other nations and learning from best practices around the world, India can gain a lot of valuable insights and frameworks for building a stronger and more adaptable education system, one that effectively cultivates critical thinking and the skills needed to thrive in the 21st century workforce. It's about recognizing that we're all part of this global learning ecosystem and can benefit from sharing knowledge.
We are. So the big takeaway, the driving force behind all these future strategies, is to move beyond simply being consumers of knowledge and to become active creators and disseminators of knowledge. It's about becoming a nation of thinkers.
That's it. It's about empowering people to not just understand the world around them, but to actually shape it through innovation, problem solving, and informed decision making.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it's clear that India's thinking problem, this challenge of fostering critical and independent thought, it's a complex issue with deep roots in the country's history, culture, and education system.
Absolutely. But while the analysis we've explored points out those hurdles, it also highlights some significant and encouraging steps that are being taken. Initiatives like NEP 2020 and other educational reforms that are underway are all aimed at fostering a society that's more engaged, more critical in its thinking.
They are. But as we've discussed, this is a long and intricate process that requires sustained collective effort from everyone involved, educators, policymakers, parents, and most importantly, the students themselves. The vision, though, it's a powerful one. It's a future where India truly shines on the world stage, not just because of its size and potential, but because of the quality of its thinking, its embrace of innovation, and its vibrant culture of inquiry.
And in the end, the responsibility for creating this transformation is shared. It requires a fundamental shift in mindset and a real commitment to making critical thinking a cornerstone of education and of societal development as a whole.
It does. So as you think about the vital role that critical thinking plays in navigating our increasingly complex world, what are the key things that you, the listener, believe are most crucial for creating a truly thinking nation? It's a question worth pondering and maybe even exploring further on your own.